Well, buckle up today. There is so much to get to. We may have to extend the show. Steph with the deets, our internet social media sleuth, who is digging in and finding new details in the Blake Baldoni situation. How Harvey Weinstein is involved. Bad news for Blake's publicist. Then big-time podcaster Ben Shapiro joins us. Why he's in a war of words with Stephen A. Smith. By the way, so is LeBron James. And why Disney just said no press at the Snow White premiere. My God, we've got it all covered. It's Hot Mics with Billy Bush, presented by our friends at LA Golf. All right, we are live on TuneIn and YouTube. Let's jump right in. Is Rachel Zegler the new Dylan Mulvaney? Bud Light's market cap crashed when their new woke head of marketing decided a partnership with trans influencer Dylan Mulvaney was a good idea. It was a seminal event. Now Modelo is the number one selling beer in America. But what Dylan did for Bud Light, Rachel Zegler, star of the West Side Story film, might do for Disney. She's playing Snow White in the upcoming Disney live-action film, which hits theaters a week from Friday. So speaking to Variety 2 years ago at the D23 Expo, here's what she said about the new vibe of the film. It's no longer 1937. She, Snow White, is not going to be dreaming of being saved by the prince. She's going to be dreaming of being the leader her father told her she would be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true. September of 2022. Saying all the right things then, right? At the time she said it. Right? It checked all the approved boxes. She went on to talk about how as a little girl, she was scared of Snow White, hated the Disney ride, Snow White and the Scary Adventure or whatever. She didn't even like it. Now she's down for changing the whole script? You bet. And guess what? The prince gets castrated in this one. She says it's a weird love story, right? The original, like with a prince that literally stalks her. So we didn't do that this time. I think people are tired of the feminist flex, right? The women as victims, girls as prey ideology is irritating, and all our old classics, now need to be reframed. Remember the song, Baby, It's Cold Outside? I mean, it's been around for 100 years, and then someone decided, no, the guy's literally trapping her inside, trying to assault her. He won't let her... What? I really can't stay. I mean, come on. Barbie, big success, but Ken's the idiot, and she's empowered. Female empowerment is a term Hollywood actresses love to peddle. There is a Glamour Elle Variety magazine-sponsored powerful women's luncheon every day in Hollywood. In this case, it's insulting to people who cherish the story of Snow White and would love to see it with all the new technology and the sound effects that we have available today, but the original story. And then, of course, there's the issue that, well, she's not white, she's brown. A lot of hypocrisy here. It's Hollywood that mandated only gay people can play gay. Blacks can only play black. Sorry, Robert Downey Jr., no sequel to Tropic Thunder. And if they powder Rachel's face because Snow White was super pale, right? Her skin is as white as snow. Is that not appropriation, according to the rules you wrote? They needed to release this last year, just before people began vocalizing their rejection of these force-fed ideas. I love this. In a somewhat humorous twist, Peter Dinklage bemoaned a misplaced outrage and lobbed this little pearl in there. He said, literally, no offense to anything, but, I was sort of taken aback. They were very proud to cast a Latino actress as Snow White, but you're still telling the story of Snow White and these 7 dwarves. Take a step back and look at what you're doing there. It's the story, Peter, like we said, but Hollywood, stop thinking for people. Stop the heavy-handedness of forcing people to think a certain way. Stop insulting people by filtering what they take in. Women still talk about having their fairy tale weddings, like almost every one of them. It's okay. Not every woman feels the need to blow up men, be a business leader. Many want their Prince Charming and want their Disney characters and stories as is. Here's what you can do if you want a different story. Just make a new one. It's Hollywood. Now, I mentioned Dylan Mulvaney at the outset. Dylan is famous for tanking the Bud Light brand. Not true. The marketing director is tanked the Bud Light brand by sending all the Bud Light to Dylan. Dylan was a guest on The View this week, which leads us to an installment of Whoopi Goldberg. Do we have the Whoopi? All right, listen to this. Here's Whoopi Goldberg on The View with Dylan Mulvaney as the guest. Okay.
Is if you don't know anything about our bodies, you don't know how it works. Mm-hmm. So when you come in and you say, oh, you know, these are men, you know, competing against women, you're assuming that the women are weak and just can't do anything except be here. Have you seen female athletes? They know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure what's going on or why this is an issue.
Yeah, so Whoopi is talking about, you know, boys on girls' teams competing, and she's blatant, you know, just sucking up to Dylan Mulvaney. But Whoopi has gotten so comfortable in spewing formerly unchallengeable tropes, things that people couldn't raise a voice if they felt otherwise, that she apparently refuses to do any research. She takes unfettered stands on positions acceptable to the media elite. That's so brave. I mean, it's just like unbelievable. She takes the female and trans experience and kind of throws them into a blender, right? She's saying, if you don't know anything about our bodies, you don't know how it works. I mean, in exasperation, why is this an issue? Well, it's an issue, Whoopi, because we do know everything about our bodies and how they work. Nobody knows for sure what causes a person to transition, but it's generally believed to be a complex interplay of biological factors, including genetics, hormone levels, brain structure variations, social factors. Thank you, ChatGPT, for that. But look, I have great compassion for any, especially young person, who feels like an alien in their own body. Anyone bullied or left out. Inclusion to me is what basically means what my dad always said to me. Lift up the little guy, okay? A female friend of mine told me that her dad said in high school, look, whatever boy asks you to the prom first, you say yes to that kid no matter how uncool he is or whatever, knowing what it took for that kid to muster up the courage to ask out the cute girl. I love that policy. Finding room in your heart for a boy whose biological fluctuations make him feel different is kind and good. Finding room for him on the girls' track team and winning state is unkind and unfair to the girls who are competing at an equitable level of estrogen, which, of course, regulates menstrual cycle and forms breasts, muscle mass, lung capacity, heart size, height, bone density. Ultimately, it's unkind also to that boy who's going to now be treated really differently. This was a big issue in Maine. You saw the Maine governor take on the president of the United States. Trump went after her. But there's, an athlete who was a freshman on the boys' team right there on the left, in the left circle, freshman year, 5th place in pole vaulting. And then the picture on the right, the transition complete, 1st place on the women's team. So, look, I understand bleeding heart liberals. I get it, in matters of race, gender, mental capability. They want to merge all lanes so those marginalized people won't feel hurt. And also, importantly, they themselves won't experience guilt. It comes from a good place, but they've run rampant in America. Given an inch, they took a mile. People got fed up, felt safe enough finally in their numbers to say no more. The fear of career and social banishment is, finally abating. Shame as a weapon to make normal, rational folks nod along with the madness kind of lost its effect. So, coming up here, the brilliant, fearless, and polarizing, to some, Ben Shapiro joins us. I never imagined we'd begin with Snow White, but the man loves show tunes, and he hates woke Hollywood. And he's pissed. Hot Mics with Billy Bush, presented by LA Golf. We'll get to Ben in just a second. But do you have a golf game? Does it suck? Do you need a little fixing? You're not going to live. You can up your game with the first ever, here it is, carbon putter. I have this putter. Paired with Bryson DeChambeau's putter technology, it will solve all your putter problems. The carbon head is 5 times less dense than steel, giving you a sweet spot that is twice as big as other putters. It's not the size of the putter, right? You just want to get it in the hole. LA Golf is changing the game with the most technologically advanced golf products on the market. Take the swing with LA Golf today. And by the way, folks, if you're listening on TuneIn, upgrade to TuneIn Premium. If you're listening on YouTube, TuneIn Premium is what I have. You can unlock all access to college sports, every NHL game with blackouts and more. Go to tunein.com/premium and get on board. The mics are hot right now with Ben Shapiro, the millennial Moses. He's one of the most successful conservative commentators, a YouTube subscribership of like over 7 million people. He owns, publishes The Daily Wire. He takes on opponents and detractors without fear. He's got a razor-sharp wit and banter that make for entertaining viewing, whether you adhere to his views or you hate watch. I don't know. He loves show tunes like me, tired of Hollywood dismantling and reshaping classics like Snow White. So here's the question with Snow White. That Rachel Zegler's brown, that the dwarves were originally normal-sized, but test audiences reacted violently, so they shrank them through CGI, or that Rachel Zegler basically crapped all over her Israeli co-star Gal Gadot by tweeting, "Remember, folks, as always, free Palestine."
First of all, shut the up. You don't know what you're talking about. Can she describe the borders of Palestine? Can she describe where in the world it is? She knows nothing. She's a foolish Broadway actress who is given a starring role in a movie that's going to underperform. Free Palestine. Like, seriously, run by whom? Hamas? Or the PA Hamas government that currently is in place? And trying to discuss politics with people who have fewer brain cells than they have syllables in their name is always a mistake.
Well, what I love about Ben Shapiro, I don't agree with everything Ben Shapiro says, but he's a very interesting voice that's out there today, and it's an amazing story. Look, he comes from Los Angeles, which is, of course, the bluest city that we have. In fact, he grew up, his dad played the piano at Miceli's, which is a pizza place right across the street from Access Hollywood, where I worked for many, many years. Ben would go in there as a little kid and do his homework while Dad played music. And then he went to UCLA at 16 years old. Heck, the guy skipped 3rd grade and 9th grade. His mind works so quickly. Ben Shapiro with us right now. How did I do there, Ben? I was pedaling while we got your feed up there.
No, I appreciate that. That was very nice of you. That's a lot of nice words about me that I generally don't hear, so I'll just revel in that for a bit.
Well, you're also an asshole, Ben, and I'm going to tell you why. No, I'm
kidding. Thank you. You got to even it out. You got to even it out. Thank you. And that's more familiar. I was feeling uncomfortably optimistic there, and that's not my usual mode.
Ben, it's funny. I never expected to start talking about Snow White, but come on, we're here. It's Hollywood, and I know you have an opinion on this. Look, Rachel Zegler, we just heard from her. Is it your estimation that Rachel is not anti-Semitic? She's just ignorant?
I mean, I see no reason to believe that she's anti-Semitic. My usual assumption is that people are stupid rather than malicious. And particularly for Hollywood actors, that seems to be a pretty good rule of thumb. She doesn't seem to be wildly intelligent. She's obviously not a student of foreign policy. And I think that there's a wide contingent of people in Hollywood who have decided to take the sort of Hamas side of the Israel-Hamas conflict for reasons that range from hatred of Israel to simple, sort of simplistic division of the world into oppressor-oppressed narratives, whatever it is. Again, I'm not accusing her of hating Jews. I'm just accusing her of sort of hating reality, facts, and logic. But that she doesn't need to be involved in any of those things. She's supposed to act and sing for a living. There are a lot of problems with the movie aside from Rachel Zegler's bizarre political viewpoints.
I mean, one can be pro-Palestine without being anti-Semitic, right? I mean, Rachel Zegler is an example maybe of that. You're talking about, I'm looking about the Democratic Party, talking about pro-Hamas. I mean, the Democratic Party right now has a great opportunity to hammer Donald Trump on the economy. We've got tariffs that are throwing volatility all over the markets, and they could be seizing upon that. Instead, they're backing the rights of Mahmoud Khalil, the kid who was organizing, pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian protests on Columbia University campus. So, I mean, talk about a missed opportunity, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, just on a political level, it's malpractice. I mean, the fact is that if the economy is sinking right now, if people are concerned about the dipping stock market, to be talking about Mahmoud Khalil and talking about how he's being wronged by a system when he is a beneficiary of that system. He was brought to the United States. He was given originally a student visa, maybe a green card. We're still sort of finding out what the story is. And then he comes here, immediately joins a protest group, Columbia University Apartheid Divest, that says that they want to essentially wage war on Western civilization. And the idea from the Democrats is, this is the kind of person we need in America. This is a key issue for us. He needs to be in America. What are you guys even doing? Like, why would you do that? Why do you keep picking the 20% of 80-20 issues? And the dirty secret of President Trump's victory is that President Trump was the moderate in the race. And Democrats keep doing this. They keep handing the baton to their political opposition. Politics isn't a particularly hard game. Just keep taking the 80 side of 80-20 issues. But Democrats, for some odd reason, seem to want to jump on every 20% rake they can.
Your mind works a mile a minute. Where is it right now? What is the issue that is percolating at the top of your mind right now? Is it the economy?
I think it's the economy. I think for everybody, it's the economy. Because, listen, I voted for President Trump. I campaigned with President Trump. I went around and campaigned with a bunch of Senate candidates in this last election cycle. I like a lot of what President Trump is doing, and I like his agenda items. If the economy sinks, it's going to take all of that with it. And I think there are real dangers on the other side of that are not just relegated to President Trump himself or even the Trump administration. As I've been talking about recently, at the inauguration, President Trump was flanked by all of these captains of industry, everybody from Elon Musk to Zuck to Jeff Bezos.
It was some sight, huh? Watching them all behind him. I wondered, was that there out of support or fear?
I mean, either way, I think that the question is, if the economy goes down, it's not just going to take Trump with him. It's going to take everybody. Meaning that if the image of this administration is that this is a capitalism first, free market administration, and then the economy tanks, the next move is going to be to claim that it's the oligarchs who tank the economy for their own private benefit, and you get an upsurge in sort of Bernie bro progressive sentiment. That's my great fear. And so when President Trump is doing, this sort of militation around tariffs, when he keeps talking about how he's going to tariff our allies, how Canada is going to become the 51st state. Listen, I'm up for a joke as much as anybody else. And I think it's hilarious if we're going to troll the Canadians because, hell, they spell all of their words funny and they say a lot. But I just don't understand why we would launch a trade war on a very strong ally that is our number one trade partner.
And they're a great trade partner. They walk like us. They talk like us, mostly, other than the A. They're pretty harmless people. As far as fentanyl, which Donald says, of course, when it comes to I'm going to hit these tariffs until fentanyl stops coming in. No fentanyl is coming in from Canada, or trace amounts is coming in. That's a fine argument for Mexico. But these tariffs, like Warren Buffett called it an act of war. Larry Summers says these are irrational. Here's, two different sides. You've said the number one danger to Trump's presidency is the economy tanking. The tariff dance with Canada, Wall Street left dazed and confused as Trump jolts markets again. There's your headline. He seems to be just putting volatility into a good economy. He says we're building a tremendous foundation for the future. Is there any rationale in your mind for why he's upsetting the markets and doing this?
Again, I think that there are reasons why you could theoretically use tariffs to good effect. If you're trying to, for example, leverage Columbia, not the university, the country, into accepting back all of the various people who need to be deported there, and so you threaten tariffs in order to achieve that, I'm fine with that. If the idea is that there are certain industries in the United States that are so core to national security that we need to reshore them, I'm okay with that as well. But if the idea, as Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, seems to keep saying, is that tariffs themselves are going to strengthen the American economy. We're just going to reshore wild amounts of business, and that's not going to have any impact on, for example, prices or global markets or the dollar as the world's reserve currency. That to me is short-sighted. I don't see the rationale for it. The one thing that I count on from President Trump, I've said this many times, is that President Trump, on a very simplistic level, even if you just, whatever you think of him, the guy likes good headlines and he doesn't like bad headlines. A lot of bad headlines about the economy going down, that's not going to be a thing that I think is going to cause him to maintain the policy. So if the economy keeps sinking, if the Dow Jones keeps dropping, if the NASDAQ keeps going down overall, if that happens, then I think President Trump is largely going to look at changing course. And frankly, he should. But as a matter of policy, obviously, I think that this is misbegotten. The average tariff rate that Canada puts on our trade goods is like 1.2%, 1.3%. It's not as though they're tariffing all American goods at this wild rate. By the way, we have a trade surplus with Canada except for oil. So, again, I don't really see the logic in it. I understand that he's trying to serve particular constituencies. He wants to reshore manufacturing. And he thinks on sort of a zero-sum level that we're being screwed by some of the countries that are putting tariffs on our product. But it seems to me that this should be done with a scalpel, not with a bludgeon.
Listen, I get, there is an argument for tariffs on China. China, we're talking about manufacturing, and ostensibly, tariffs will make our manufacturing industries and our America, built by America industry much stronger. So I get it with China because they're crushing us in crushing everyone in the world when it comes to manufacturing. But why it's with everyone makes it feel like it's a cudgel, like he's having fun. Like Trump does this a lot, where he makes a big, huge statement, something so wildly over the top, and then things settle back to kind of where he wants. I think it's somewhere in the art of the deal. Do you think that my sense is that this doesn't go on forever? He's going to see that and find a way to exit this whole thing, right?
I mean, I think that's right. I think that the question is how fast he does it. And that does make a difference because the markets, investors, they like a couple of things. They like good economic policy, obviously. But they also like a level of predictability. And President Trump's a very unpredictable president, obviously. He's doing something new every single day. If you don't know from day to day whether or not there will be a tariff, it's very difficult to invest for the future. You just don't know where policy is going to be 2 days from now, let alone 2 months from now. And so what you're seeing is a lot of people who are stocking up dry powder, taking stuff out of the market because they don't know where things are going to be and they're going to wait for all the dust to settle. You're seeing that from Warren Buffett, for example, who you mentioned earlier. He's been pulling significant money out of the market since late 2024, and he's holding it in reserve, feeling like once this whole thing stabilizes, he's going to be able to buy stocks at a discount or reinvest in businesses once we kind of know where things stand. Uncertainty is not good economic policy. And so I hope that the Trump administration finds certainty on good policy faster.
Nobody wants to invest, right? I mean, no one's going to know global investment. No corporations are looking to make big deals because they really don't know what's going to happen next week. I mean, Trump is this is, this. But did you say Warren Buffett is pulling money out? Did he? What are you doing right now? I know you're a very good investor. Are you buying? Tell me you're bullish and you're buying some.
I'm certainly not buying into this market. I mean, you'd be. I don't think that the dip has dipped all the way yet.
It's going to come around.
Again, I'm not going to start making stock tips for people. All the usual legal caveats. I will say on a personal level, a few weeks ago when a lot of this tariff stuff started, I started thinking to myself, maybe I should reinvest some of my. Warren Buffett's a good investor. Maybe I should take a hint, pull some of my money out of the markets when it's a little bit higher, and then see if I can buy stocks at a discount in a few weeks. Again, I don't think there's a permanent state of affairs.
No.
And I'm hoping that it turns around really quickly. But I think there are a lot of people who are thinking like me, which is presumably one of the reasons why the Dow is down.
Right. Well, look, as long as we put it back in, I do think it's temporary. Trump just wants to be popular. He wants to be loved. You're right. Hate's a bad headline. Your relationship with Trump, interesting. 2016, would you say a never Trumper or just didn't like him very much because in 20 and 24, full support. You raised money for him. You were out there. What is the first event that triggered your change towards him?
I mean, honestly, like a month into his first presidency, he nominated Neil Gorsuch for the Supreme Court, and I put a MAGA hat on air. So there are many things that I said about President Trump in 2016. I didn't vote for either candidate in 2016 because they didn't meet my minimum standards of qualification for the presidency. It was the first time in my adult lifetime.
Did you go libertarian?
I voted for nobody. I didn't vote at the top of the ticket. I voted down ticket. Honestly, if I'd been in a swing state, I likely would have voted for Trump. I was in California, which meant my vote really didn't matter anyway, to be fair. But I didn't vote at the top of the ticket in 2016. And I made a bunch of arguments about what President Trump might do if he became president. Some of those came true. Some of those didn't come true. One of the things that certainly didn't come true was my sort of supposition that he would govern more to the left than he did. He ended up being the most conservative president in terms of policy of my lifetime. And so that made me quite happy. And so when the facts changed, so does my opinion. You didn't know what President Trump was going to be until he actually became president. Then he became president. He did a bunch of stuff I liked. It turns out that if you do stuff I like, then you earn my vote. And so by 2020, I was endorsing him for the presidency. And then by 2024, I was out campaigning for him and giving him money. So obviously, I think that new evidence suggests a different approach to President Trump. And now, depending on how his presidency goes, I think it's fair to say that he's going to be one of the most transformative political figures in American history. I mean, what we're watching right now is truly an incredible thing.
I mean, yeah. First of all, he wasn't always a Republican. He was very Hillary and Bill were right there at his wedding. Donald wrote checks to everybody so he was very open, about that. But he became this great conservative leader, a man with a morally checkered past, is now very popular with the evangelical right. You are an Orthodox Jew. You're, I think, morally right, a strong man. You probably don't, love him as a guy, or have you ever sat down and had a conversation with Donald Trump about life, family, the thing other than policy?
Not particularly. I mean, the conversations that I've had with him are all politically related. We did a fundraiser for him at Trump Doral, where we had the opportunity to sit together, and he was talking about politics. He was talking about the election. I brought him, or I went with him to the grave of Menachem Mendel Schneerson on the anniversary of October 7th, and I brought one of the American families of an American citizen who's being held hostage by Hamas in Gaza, and introduced them to President Trump. So that was obviously a pretty, emotionally resonant and fraught circumstance. And then I've had him on the show. Those are kind of all of my interpersonal dealings with President Trump. I will say he's amazing in a room. I mean, just in terms of his actual political skills, he's unbelievable. I know a lot of politicians, terrific as a human, just human to human. This, I think, is his unappreciated skill.
He's very
super, super funny. So I think people appreciate the fact that he has a sort of stand-up comedy aspect to his whole persona, that when he goes on stage, it's more of a comedy show than it is a political rally. And I think that's one of the things that broke the mold about him, is that he is an entertainer. But the thing that's really underrated about him is that he's amazing in a room with human beings. And that is a really underrated quality among politicians. That dude can work a room like nobody's business. I've watched him introduce himself to people, and people introduce themselves, and he focuses in on them. He likes people. This is the thing about President Trump. He actually likes human beings, and he likes talking to human beings, and he likes being with human beings. There are a lot of politicians who are not like that. And that skill set is really good. Now, again, that doesn't have anything to do with the moral quality of the personal life that he's led. But the truth is that I know a lot of people whose personal lives are not, personal lives that I'd want to emulate, with whom I'm friends and people who I deal with in business. And that's the way that it is. The truth is, when it comes to the president of the United States, I think that we've exited the era a long time ago, probably the Clinton era, where you demanded that the president of the United States be sort of the moral exemplar to the American public. And we're now in an era that I think of more as the president is a plumber. And I don't really care what my plumber does in his off hours. I really care that he fixes the toilet. And President Trump, the odds of him fixing the toilet were significantly better than the odds of anyone else fixing the toilet.
You said Trump was like a stand-up comedian. You're totally correct. And he says the craziest things. I don't know if you know this, Ben. I once laughed very hard at something he said because I could not believe it. It was so over the top and crazy, but it didn't end up well for me, Ben. For him, it did okay.
Well, he ended up president, so yeah, you definitely got the short end of that particular stick.
Yeah, it took me a while to recoup, but we're here, Ben. Everything's okay. Does he call you on the phone? Does he ever pick? He once called me on the phone. He was like, I heard what you said about my ratings, and I'm very upset. You shouldn't have said that. You called me a liar. I'm not a liar. And I was like, oh, shoot. I was in bed. I was going to sleep, and Trump is, monitoring what's going on my television. Has he ever called you at something you've said on the Ben Shapiro show?
I know. I've never experienced that. So I've never gotten the 3 a.m. phone call. I certainly have a lot of friends who have. And I've also never gotten one of the sort of signed tweets that you get from President Trump every so often. Or there's an article that he sees, and then he signs it with a little note. I am looking forward to receiving one of those at some point in the future. But no, I'm not the guy he calls it at 2 a.m.
Tell me about the factions. I'm interested in the factions of MAGA, right? There's the anti-DEI, anti-illegal immigration, anti-liberal. There seems to be, half are like, I'm so pissed off about where the heck this country went, and I'm against all of it. And then there's the people who are like, wait, I'm pro business, I'm pro markets, I'm pro deregulation, I'm pro. Are there the antis and the pros, basically, or how does it break down?
It's a coalition. I've always suggested that the sort of idea that there is a cohesive MAGA movement in the sense that there is a Trumpism, like a Trumpist philosophy. I don't think that's right. There's President Trump. And President Trump is a singular leader, and he's a singular figure in American history. But President Trump is not a philosophical creature. He's not somebody who has a thoroughgoing worldview or ideology, and he'll switch his mind at any given time, depending on who he's talked to or what the evidence is or what he thinks is going to be the most successful outcome. He's a real political pragmatist, right? This is why earlier we were talking about tariffs. An ideologue might say, listen, no matter what comes, we're sticking to this tariff regime, or we're never doing a tariff because I'm ideologically against it. President Trump is the kind of person who's like, I'm going to try this. If this doesn't work, I'm going to try that. If that doesn't work, I'm going to try this third thing. And so because of that, the attempt to sort of weave a philosophy around President Trump, I think, is really misbegotten. There have been a bunch of people who have tried to do it. And I think that is a failure of imagination with regard to President Trump as a human being. With that said, there are a bunch of different factions, obviously, inside the Republican Party. They're all united, insofar as they are, by opposition to the left, right? I think that it's more of an anti-left coalition than it is a conservative coalition. Because inside the Republican caucus, you have people who are pro-choice, you have people who are pro-life, you have people who are still, it's sort of a small minority position, but there are some people who are still pro-immigration. There are many people who are very anti-immigration. You have a bunch of hawks on foreign policy, you have a bunch of doves on foreign policy. It's kind of all over the place. There are only a couple of sort of unifying features of the MAGA coalition. Again, I think immigration is one of the more unifying features where pretty much everybody agrees, got to shut the southern border, for example. We have to take a harsher look at who's coming into the country. That's sort of one of the unifying features. But every other feature of the sort of Republican landscape is up for grabs. And President Trump right now is sort of papering over all of those divisions because there's a unique level of support for him, both because he beat Hillary Clinton the first time, because he beat Joe Biden the second time, and in victory lies consolidation. But it's not as though those undercurrents aren't roiling inside the Republican camp. I mean, you've seen these break out a couple of times since he became president. Most recently, you saw it, for example, with regard to H-1B visas, where President Trump and Elon Musk ended up on one side of that conversation, and there were a bunch of Republicans on the other side of that conversation,
like
very
Steve
angry
Bannon.
about H-1B visas. Yeah, exactly. Steve Bannon, who's been attacking Elon Musk.
But
so this sort of conflict does exist inside, the Republican side of the aisle.
Ben, the Democrats really screwed up when they let the far left progressive wing of the party usurp the platform, and everybody, didn't want to upset the apple cart, so they kind of fell in line, and the left center got eradicated. They lost power, overwhelmingly. Donald Trump, the first president since George W. in 2004 to win the popular vote. Never thought you'd see a Republican win the popular vote again, but he did. Is there a chance that, the same fortune could befall the Republican Party if the super far right, which may include you, sets the agenda so far that the right center gets eradicated? They don't say anything because they want to stay close to power. They want the access to Trump. They don't want to have him primary them when they run again. And then it goes back the other way.
I mean, absolutely, there's the possibility of capture by sort of the most extreme elements of the base. I mean, if you continue to resonate to the online world, then you do tend to get moved in that direction. Now, I really don't consider myself sort of part of the group that is put the pedal to the metal, go off the cliff. Like, there are certain things that, for example, I espouse politically that I know are not going to be done by the Trump administration, nor are they likely to be done by any administration. So, for example, I'm living in the world of reality when I suggest that the entitlement programs are bankrupting America. I also understand that the world of reality says Americans don't want to touch the entitlement programs. Right? That's just a reality. However, I think that the things that are likely to send Americans away from the Republican Party would be embrace of particular figures who are toxic because they're considered sort of uber transgressive. There's sort of wing that has decided that
who's that
to be anti. Andrew Tate would be a good example of somebody like this. Right? There's a wing of the party that has decided that the more transgressive you are publicly, the more virtuous you are, and I think that that's a huge mistake. There's been a sort of moral relativism that set in on certain parts of the right, where the argument against the left was, you've shut the Overton window too tight. You won't let us talk about things we need to talk about.
The Overton window, wow, that is a big one right there. I actually know what the Overton window is, but I don't think a lot of people know.
Sure.
You have to explain that.
It's
I think
sort of
it's a fascinating
the range of
thing.
acceptable discourse, right? The range of acceptable discourse. So,
Something
you and I
you
can
would
have a conversation.
that could never possibly happen. It's too far out of the realm of possibility. Trump says it, and then wait a minute, it becomes a little bit more palatable, and then it moves to, all of a sudden, it just goes through 6 phases, and it becomes policy, right? From unthinkable to policy, the Overton window.
So you can shift the Overton window. You can broaden and shift the Overton window. I think one of the things that's happened on the right more broadly is that the left, for many, many years, basically shrank the Overton window. So the range of acceptable discourse was like slightly to the right of Hillary Clinton. So if you were somebody who said, for example, that a boy is not a girl and cannot become a girl, then you might be banned from social media, right? And so the right responded to that, not by broadening the Overton window in what I think would be, decent and appropriate ways, but sometimes by just completely exploding the Overton window. And the idea was, well, anything that gets said should be treated with equal seriousness. And in fact, because we live in an incredibly reactionary moment, the more people keep yelling at me, probably the righter I am. And you combine, those sort of two elements, this idea that the more people yell at me, the more right I am, with the idea that nothing is off limits. And you end up with some pretty extreme notions that are now being promulgated as sort of part of the decent conversation. I don't think most Americans are there. I mean, one of the things I've been saying on my show a lot over the course of the last year is get out and touch grass, because there are a lot of people who are way too online, and they're following these rabbit holes online into really weird places. And I don't think that most Americans are there. And actually, one of the things about President Trump that's kind of funny is President Trump actually is not very online. President Trump does not spend his days online. And President Trump watches Fox News. Fox News is a cable network. President Trump watches MSNBC or CNN sometimes. He'll read the New York Times. He'll read the New York Post. Right? He's reading like actual print and watching TV, which is an old way of taking in information.
78.
Right. And so what that means is that he's actually more in touch with kind of normie America than many of the people who consider themselves kind of uber, ultra MAGA, who are spending all day on X retweeting memes. And so, if you get too deep into meme world, it can take you to some pretty bad places. The Democrats got too deep into left-wing meme world, and they ended up out of power. So I think that absolutely that's a risk.
You are lucky. I mean, you're an Orthodox Jew. So from, sundown on Friday to Sunday, you got the weekends of no communication, right? You're not online. You're not reading anything. You are behaving, which is probably great for your sanity. It rests that wild mind of yours, that so it can keep up with the mouth and they can sync up together. But I have to imagine that Trump has made your job harder, even though you go every day, because if you want to stay on something, this flood the zone thing is a real thing. I mean, the economy, we lose 900 points in the market on Monday. We lose more on Tuesday. We're all Wall Street's freaking out about the tariffs. They're up and down. Today, 1,000 jobs out of the, Department of Education. He has already moved on. I mean, he just keeps going.
Well, it's actually a really smart political strategy.
Yeah.
It's good for my business, right?
You can't keep up. And if you can't keep up.
I can't keep up, but neither can the audience, which means that you have to keep tuning in, right? Like, I don't know what he's done in the last 5 minutes. We've been talking here for like 20 minutes, and I have no idea what's happening, and I really need to check in because something could have gone wildly right or wildly wrong. I mean, this is good TV. And President Trump, we know more than anything else, loves good TV. He loves ratings, and so that has something to do with this. But this is actually quite a smart political strategy because he's rolling out something new every couple of days, basically. The Democrats don't have a chance to catch up. They're not having a chance to sort of fixate their guns on one thing and then obliterate that one thing. Instead, they're sort of chasing him like a cat with a laser pointer, and he just keeps moving the laser pointer, and they don't know quite what to do about it. That's why, as I say, I think they're running so far behind him at this point. The only thing that could really hamper him is a serious economic downturn. Because at that point, everybody fixates on the serious economic downturn because everything else becomes unimportant. But otherwise, so one day they're focusing on DOGE, and then one day they're focusing on the Department of Education. One day they're focusing on him deporting a green card holder who loves Hamas, right? Like, it's a new thing every single day. And by the time they react to this thing, he's already moved on to the next thing. And they're really having a tough time keeping up. So,
you mentioned DOGE. I'll say, let's talk about Elon for a second here. You traveled to Auschwitz with him. You've looked in his eyes. He, supported the Alternative for Deutschland party in Germany, which got the second most amount of votes, the very far right party. He gave what Democrats and Bill Burr call the Sieg Heil salute, which what they refer to it as. His rival Steve Bannon then emulated it on stage. Others have done it. Look, you're wearing a yarmulke right now. You've looked him in the eyes. Is he an anti-Semite in any way?
Nah, it's one of the stupidest propositions I've ever heard. I mean, really. And the evidence that is adduced to the idea that Elon is an anti-Semite, ranging from odd spastic hand motions. I mean, have you ever seen Elon on stage? He makes weird hand motions about 73% of the time. A lot of weird things.
Did you see him joking with Larry Kudlow the other day in his interview? And he's sort of just like, he's lost 40% of market share from Tesla, and he's just making jokes, and it's weird.
I mean, listen, I saw him backstage at CPAC, and the first thing that I said to him, he was wearing meme sunglasses and carrying a chainsaw, and he turns to me and he goes, Ben, I'm living the meme. Okay, I mean, this is the world in which we now live. And I said to him, Elon, when you go out there, I just want you to make sure, keep your arm below 90 degrees, please, for the love of God, keep your right arm below 90 degrees, not at you don't want it up in in a 165-degree angle. You don't want that. You want it down below 90, right? Keep it below your waist, please.
Oh my God.
This bizarre idea that Elon is some sort of, first of all, Bill Burr has totally lost the thread. I used to be a big Bill Burr fan. I went to a performance that Bill Burr did down here in Hollywood, in Florida. And it was so bad that half the audience was basically walking out. I mean, he's gone really, really woke. And then he gets angry at me for saying that he's woke. But if you don't want me to, yell at you for being woke, then don't be a schmuck on stage. don't say dumb things like it's okay when, or imply that it's okay when.
I think he's doing the same thing from his side.
CEOs are getting murdered.
But he's kicking the Democratic Party in the pants too. He's saying, "Where are you, my fellow liberals? Why are you letting everybody roll it?" We were just talking a second ago about the fact that they're not doing anything, or I guess they are. They're picking the wrong. They're picking
the wrong fights.
They're backing Mahmoud Khalil when they should be hammering tariffs.
As far as Elon, again, the sort of implication that Elon is anti-Semitic because of a weird hand motion, or because
Did you tell him don't do the from my heart to you, which is what he calls it, the from my heart to all of you? It just looks. Don't give him that.
Yeah, that's what I said. I was like, well, why, dude? Please, just don't. You know the rules.
Did you say that to him?
Yeah, absolutely.
What did he say?
He laughed. I mean, he laughed, and then when he went on stage, he was very careful not to put his arm up. I think that Elon knows that what he's doing right now is really quite important. He also knows that he's the target of an enormous amount of ire. One of the reasons I think that President Trump finds him so indispensable at this point is because he's basically a heat shield for President Trump. I mean, at this point, he's doing a lot of things that could get Trump, in political trouble if Trump were doing them himself. Here he has the world's richest man, a man who runs X, the world's largest social media service in some ways. And this guy is willing to take the heat. I mean, that's pretty indispensable.
Well, you have to be very rich to do that. What are your look? I mean, I'm interested in your thoughts on DOGE. Are you bullish or are you wary? I tend to think that, when Elon Musk said our interest payment to the national debt, which is massive, is higher. The interest payment alone is higher than the defense budget in a year. That's just not sustainable. I mean, this is just like you got to do something. And when the richest guy in the world, obviously a good businessman, says, "Let me take a crack at it," I say, "Okay, let's see what you can do." So, I mean, I cautiously optimistic. What are you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic about what he's doing with DOGE for a couple of reasons. I think there are a couple of different ways to see DOGE. If you see it as sort of the be-all, end-all of cutting spending, we're not getting there. Okay, we're not solving the national debt by him cutting $50 billion from USAID. It's just not enough money. I mean, we're spending $6-7 trillion a year in the United States for the foreseeable future out into Netherlands over there. So, that's not going to do it. If what he's saying to the American people is we need to cut the waste, fraud, and abuse, and you should recognize that your government is filled with it, that I like. I like many of the cuts that he's making to programs, including USAID. He does have to move fast because the approach that he's taking is basically the same approach that he took when he took over X, right? He's going and he's firing everybody, and then he's trying to rebuild the systems that he thinks that he needs. And that is a very different way than usually you approach government. Usually when you come into government, you try to examine what it is you need to cut. It might take you a while to figure out who you need to cut. Then you run it through the entire system. He's like, break things, move fast. And because he understands that basically President Trump has maybe 18 months before the midterm fever starts to kick in, he's got to move fast, and he's got to do that. He's speaking with Congress about rescission power, the ability of Congress to kind of pull back some of the spending and greenlight the cuts that he's currently making. I think overall what he's doing is really terrific. I think that, again, he's got to outrun the bear, and the bear is going to be headlines about various programs that people actually like that are accidentally getting cut, for example, or that are downstream effects of a cut that really haven't been thought of because he just walks in, he says this looks like a bunch of waste, he gets $100 million from a thing, and it turns out that $2 million of those dollars were actually used for something good. And so I think the American people are giving him a lot of leeway, and they should give him a lot of leeway in terms of these cuts. And again, I'm very high on DOGE. I think DOGE is great. And
the Democrats have someone. I mean, Trump is Teflon. So we'll see Teflon how Teflon Elon is, because he is definitely the new target. But is it at all problematic to you, though, when you see, for all of his efforts, like, it can't be for just because he's a great citizen and he loves America so much. I mean, he's got bigger government contracts through his businesses than anyone. Trump is out in front of the lawn there with 5 Teslas, almost like a car dealer. Come on down to Crazy Don's, and he's moving Teslas there with Elon. Does any part of you go, eh?
I mean, to be fair to Trump and Elon, Joe Biden had Stellantis to the White House and basically did the same thing. So it's not something particularly new. But obviously these kind of cozy business relationships at the same time that you're working together in government, it doesn't look amazing. And this is one of the reasons why, again, I mentioned earlier, the consequences of economic downturn are going to be really bad, not just for Trump, but for Elon and for free market capitalism in general, because all those pictures are going to get recapitulated if the economy tanks. If the economy tanks, it's going to be like, look at Trump and all of his best friends in big business, and he was helping them make off like bandits while you were suffering. Like, that's going to be the pitch from the left if the economy drops. Do I think that Elon is doing it for the money? No, I don't think Elon is doing it for the federal subsidies to SpaceX. I mean, the guy's worth, even with the dump in the market on Tesla, he's still worth, I think, $150 billion. I feel like he and his myriad of children are going to be fine financially. So I really don't think that that's what's happening here. And I do think that Elon is bizarrely ideologically driven. Like, there are certain causes that he really cares about. The national debt happens to be one of them. And then he fixates on them. And you can see this in sort of his online persona. I mean, the guy never sleeps. He's online all the time. And he fixates on particular topics, and he just kind of sticks on them over and over and over and over. And so, you know, it wouldn't be surprising to me if he actually is doing this out of a sense of public duty. Like, if you're in that position, this is what you do.
Well, it's definitely dire. I mean, the debt is as massive as it just right back to the beginning, that the interest payment is bigger than to the debt is bigger than our defense budget. Ben, shifting gears, what do you and LeBron James have in common?
Well, apparently Stephen A. Smith is mad at both of us.
Yeah, he's mad.
Although to be honest with you, I agree with him on Bronny. I see no reason why Bronny should be in the NBA. So that's our one crossover.
That's an olive branch to Stephen. That's an olive branch to Stephen A.
Exactly.
But
and that'll be the only olive branch to Stephen A. Because frankly, I think that he gets paid a lot of money to speak at extraordinarily high volume. I mean, I guess we have that in common too. I don't speak at high volume, but I speak at high speed. So I'm high speed and he's high volume. Is sort of, I think, the difference between us.
Well, he obviously took issue with you. Derek Chauvin, the Minnesota police officer who had his knee on George Floyd's neck for almost 10 minutes. Chauvin believes he should not be in jail for killing George Floyd. You agree, saying the jury had no real choice other than to convict. I mean, their homes would be firebombed, and Floyd's pre-existing heart disease, use of fentanyl on top of that is really what caused him to fail. This raised the ire of the bombastic Stephen A. If you haven't seen the clip, here goes Stephen.
This is not a quality of life issue, Ben Shapiro. This is a quality of life issue coming to the defense of a cop whose knee was on a black man's neck for over 9 minutes. That is what you want to condone? That is what you want to let out of jail? That is what you want to fall on your sword for? Would you do it if a white Jewish person had a knee on their neck for 9.5 minutes? And it was a black cop that did it?
Yeah, Stephen A. Wow. So, Ben, you called for a presidential pardon on the federal charges. I'll posit that there's zero chance of that happening, but you probably agree with that. Why take up the cause? Because even if Trump issues a federal pardon, the state will never overturn their conviction. Why not just leave it?
No, so there are a couple of practical reasons. One, if you believe, as I do, that Derek Chauvin is not guilty in the murder of George Floyd, that Floyd died from a massive enlarged heart, that he was saying in the car before he was being put on the ground that he couldn't breathe, that he had enough fentanyl in him to kill a horse, that all this stuff was in the original medical autopsy that was then sort of buried. If you agree with that, then an innocent person sitting in jail for a long period of time is wrong. If he's relieved of the federal charges, then he could theoretically get good time served in state prison, and his sentence would be shorter. So that is the actual sort of practical reason. On sort of an ideological narrative level, I think that it's important to push back on many of the narratives that we've seen over the course of the last 10 years. And this is like the number one narrative that was pushed, that this was a case not only of murder, but a case of deeply embedded American racism, and it was all about the race of the people who are involved. And you hear Stephen A. doing that right there. Thinking about these situations in the reductive terms of race is exactly what I think led to the injustice in this case. And it certainly led to the burning down of $2 billion worth of property over the course of 2020. And so I think that's quite vile, actually. And my feeling is that regardless the race of the person who was involved in the incident, whether a cop or alleged victim, that should have no bearing on whether or not the person is guilty or innocent. I mean, there was not even an allegation that Derek Chauvin did this, quote unquote, because George Floyd was black. And so the attempt to turn this into the racial narrative upon which America was basically burned down, that to me is really terrible for the country. I think it needs to be debunked. I think it needs to be taken up. Stephen A. is making several arguments there. He's conflating a bunch of them. He makes the argument that this isn't a quality of life issue. I wasn't aware that I'm only talking about quality of life issues on my show. Right? Sometimes I talk about moral issues. Sometimes I talk about criminal issues. And we all talk about these things on all of our shows. Two, he makes the case that that it was dispositive that Chauvin actually murdered George Floyd. Actually, it is not dispositive. At the very least, even if you believe that Chauvin was guilty of something, the idea that he had a fair trial is absurd. There were jurors who were on the jury who were literally rallying for George Floyd in shirts that said things like, "I can't breathe." And they were on the jury. And this was held in Minneapolis, and the mayor of Minneapolis was paying payoffs to the Floyd family, settlements to the family in the middle of the trial. And the presidential candidate on the left side of the aisle, Joe Biden at the time, was essentially implying that the jury should rule in a particular way. There's never been more public pressure on a jury than there was in the Derek Chauvin, George Floyd case. So just on a sort of procedural level, you would not want to be in the dock in this particular situation. And then, you hear Stephen A. do the routine where obviously I would think differently if it was a white Jewish guy. First of all, I don't care what the race of the person is. I don't care what the religion of the person is. I find it weird that he has to say a white Jewish guy, as though I would have sort of more sympathy, not only for a Jew, but also for a white Jew, as opposed to what, a Sephardic Jew, like my wife who's Moroccan. It's a bizarre and reductive view on American life and sort of race in general that Stephen A. seems to be positing now.
There's a bubble and it burst. Same thing with Harvey Weinstein and Me Too. And, I think Harvey was cooked no matter what. And he's got, when there's 60, 80, I don't know how many accusers, he's cooked no matter what. But black people sort of at that time felt this way. They felt like we talked earlier about, the economy is predicated on the perception of health, right? If we perceive that the economy is unhealthy, oh my God, the market goes down. Black people, people can get into the stats and everything, but there is a sense in the community, a deep sense that they feel underserved and over-targeted by police. So you can truck out facts and do whatever, but it doesn't sort of...
Well, I think it's important because the sort of downside effect, one of the downside effects here was a massive under-policing that then occurred and resulted in significant upticks in crime in largely black areas, which was terrible for black Americans. You saw something similar in the aftermath of the Ferguson killing of Michael Brown, when there was a massive increase in crime rates in cities across America, both because there was sort of a defund the police movement and also because cops took away the lesson from the Michael Brown situation that they just should not police, that they should essentially, in any situation that might get caught on camera, where it might get misinterpreted, that they just should let it go. And you see a massive uptick in crime. So this does have ramifications for public policy. Again, I can't.
Trump's
tell people
not going to do it, though. I mean, do you have any?
No. Sure. I mean, and again, I can't make a decision for President Trump. All I can do is call on him to do a thing that I think he should do. Whether he does it or not is up to him.
Okay, let's go to, speaking of your amazing track record here, especially as a student. You skipped third grade and you skipped ninth grade. Are those just like easy grades that, if you're smart, you can skip them? Because then you go on, you graduate high school at 16, college at 20. I mean, you don't just speak quickly, you live quickly. How did this... what is your IQ? Is it like 180, 150?
It's definitely not 180.
Have you ever tested it?
Yeah. It was tested I went to a highly gifted magnet called Walter Reed, actually, in Los Angeles. And I'll say that the minimum cutoff to get in at the time was 150. I'm not going to say that I clocked in well over. Well, I didn't clock in at 180. There were kids in the class who definitely clocked in at 180. There's a girl in our class who was doing like upper level college calculus in this is in 7th grade. Something like that.
So you were up there, though.
I don't want to, Yes, I clocked it. I got into the school. I have a high IQ just on a raw level. If that test was accurate, maybe it's not. Maybe I'm a moron and everybody's got it right.
Ben, I'd like to have dinner with you. Be like, dessert. You got engaged at 24 after 3 months of dating your wife more. What happened there? I mean, talk about a fast mover.
Yeah,
she must have really
I saw what I liked,
eye.
and I saw what I liked, and I picked it up. So
where were you?
Essentially, so my wife was at UCLA at the time. My sister was at UCLA. She fixed us up. I'd come back from Harvard Law School. I was working at a law firm, and I met my wife. We did a 3.5-hour first date. We went to coffee and walked on the beach, and then it was in the Orthodox community. You don't date for fun. You date for marriage. Right? You're dating with an eye toward marriage, which, by the way, is
it was
a
an
very
interview.
good way to date. Yes. Absolutely, 100% for her and for me, right? Because what you're actually trying to figure out when you're dating in this way is whether this is someone that you wish to build a family and a life with. And so obviously you want to have fun with them, you want to love them, you want to find them physically attractive and all that. But the deeper underlying values actually have to converge in order for you to want to build a life with somebody. And so dating with purpose means that you're dating in a different way. So, I mean, on our first date, we talked about things like free will and determinism is an actual thing.
On the first date, you talked about free will and determinism.
Yes. For a while. Yeah. And then on the way back, I said to her, we were in the car, and I said to her, listen, I don't want to do this whole kind of like weird dating thing where I'm at the 3-day rule where I'm not supposed to ask you for 3 days, that you feel like, on tenterhooks or anything. We're in the car. If you want to go out again, tell me that you want to go out again. We'll go out a couple of days from now. If you don't want to do it, let me know, and no harm, no foul. And we dated for 3.5 months. We've been married for, that was 2008 we got married. So we've been married for almost 17 years. We have 4 kids. And it worked out great. I don't think that, again, if you're dating for the right things, I think that you can make decisions pretty quickly about whether the person is, you can certainly rule people out much more quickly than you would on, say, Love is Blind, right? Where apparently the way that you date people is you just completely ignore the values of the person you're dating for long periods of time, and then you're shocked when that person doesn't want to marry you or something.
Yeah, you need to everyone needs to interview whoever they're, going to end up building a family with. A deep, long interview. Make sure your values and your faith, especially, or whatever, are aligned. Because it's a grind. I got a couple of pop culture things for you because I know you're not afraid to move it around a little bit. Have you been following the Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni thing?
I have. I mean, I will admit that I've been calling on some of my more into this friends to advise me on this. Megyn Kelly, she's very into this. So Megyn has been sort of informing me as to what is going on, and then I have a couple of producers who are very, very into this and who have been informing me as to what's going on as well. And I gotta say, I mean, it doesn't look good for Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively. I mean, they look pretty terrible, and Taylor Swift seems like a not particularly nice person as well. And you got to feel a little bad for Justin Baldoni, who was basically drawn from obscurity to do this movie and then was bigfooted by these much, much larger stars. In the end, the person I think who's going to be the most damaged from it, Blake Lively wasn't nearly that big a star. I think Ryan Reynolds actually has a real image problem now. And I'm not sure he's going to, well, because Ryan Reynolds' entire image is like happy-go-lucky, cool guy that you want to hang out with. Definitely not the kind of uptight person who would sit in a room and bully a director to listen to his wife for her script notes. Definitely not that kind of guy.
You wouldn't think that, yeah.
Right, exactly. And then when you kind of subvert the expectations of the audience that much, where it seems like actually you seem like kind of an ass. Like it's really hard to walk that back.
The amazing to me is like he got so involved in all of this that he got his best friend Hugh Jackman, his mother, all to do an interview with his wife's romantic co-lead from the film, the other one, not Justin Baldoni, but Brendan Sklenar, did an interview with him about getting romantic with his wife. It's very creepy that he would leave, he's a big Deadpool guy. Why are you putting this guy in an interview with your best friend and your mom about hooking up with your wife on camera? I mean, it looks crazy to me.
It definitely does. And again, like if you're Ryan Reynolds and you got hit by this stray, you got to be pretty unhappy about it, I would imagine, because he's the one with the most to lose. I mean, Justin Baldoni will go from semi-obscurity to actually some level of fame, and Blake Lively will go from some level of fame to a little bit higher level of fame, but not in a good way. Ryan Reynolds he was uber famous. I mean, he was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. And so for him to actually take this much mud on his hem is really bad for him, I think.
It's amazing to see if how much he does. There's some new details in the Blake Lively Baldoni situation, which I'm going to get to in a second, but I know you got to run. You got stuff to do. Ben, thank you very much. The Ben Shapiro Show is Mondays through Fridays, every day at 1 o'clock, huh? You're a very busy man. 1 Eastern.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You can find it everywhere. It's been a real joy. Of course, the Daily Wire, if you're not a subscriber, you can be, if you can keep up with Ben. Ben, I think I did a good job keeping up with you. I was very nervous about it. I'm not going to lie. Holy you're fast, buddy.
It's okay. Listen to me at 0.75 speed. I sound drunk.
Thanks a million, man. Good to see you.
Thanks a lot.
So big revelation in the Blake Lively Baldoni saga we got to get to here. Blake's publicist, the charming and lovely Leslie Sloan, has been trying to get the judge to dismiss her from Baldoni's suit, which includes her for alleged involvement in the New York Times hit piece on Baldoni that started the whole thing back in December. The Blake Baldoni drama begins December 20th of last year. Blake files the 80-page civil rights complaint accusing Justin of sexual harassment and executing a public smear campaign against her in retaliation. 2 days later, the New York Times rolls out the massive article supporting all of Blake's claims. The article was authored by Megan Twohey, who in 2017 also penned the Harvey Weinstein piece, which led to his takedown and her getting the Pulitzer Prize. So Blake's on the record having bragged about her connections at the New York Times, which amount to a hammer if she were to ever need one. So Megan Twohey, the New York Times reporter, her article supporting Blake, obviously prepared with advance notice. I mean, hinting at major collusion with Team Blake. Central on Team Blake is her cutthroat publicist, Leslie Sloan. So Baldoni countersues the New York Times for defamation, and he sues Blake for smearing him. And you know all that. Well, today, TikTok and social media sleuth, our friend Steph with the deets, connected some dots. That'll make it, well, harder for Leslie Sloan, Blake's publicist, to get dismissed from Baldoni's lawsuit. Leslie used to rep Harvey Weinstein. Harvey ended up funding her breakaway PR firm, the one that stands today, Vision PR. Harvey allegedly wanted more control in the company than Leslie was willing to give. After Leslie's friend, Megan Twohey, by the way, you can see this right here from the Hollywood Reporter if you're watching on YouTube. This is the announcement from 2014. Harvey Weinstein backing publicist Leslie Sloan's new venture. And look at the three names that are mentioned for Leslie's powerful list: Katie Holmes, Blake Lively, Megan Fox. Anyway, so Megan Twohey, the writer from the Times, takes out Harvey Weinstein. Now, Leslie, free of Harvey, has control of her company. You see the problem? Leslie wants us to believe that, she had no involvement in Megan Twohey's investigation into Baldoni, that whole article? No connection whatsoever at this point? I mean, it happened before. You got to assume that she was, in deep connection with Megan Twohey to get Harvey off of her back. And now when it comes to Baldoni, there you go. So that's a connection that is just, it was right there. But Steph with the deets, our good friend, pointed it out. I don't think Leslie's going to get dismissed from the lawsuit. Well, coming up, hot mics, hot takes. This is unbelievable. Bye-bye, Rosie. Rosie O'Donnell. She's gone. And Trump has something to say about it. Wouldn't you be surprised that of all the things that are going on, Trump has time? We'll be right back with hot mics, hot takes in just a second. But first, LA Golf, baby. That's our sponsor. You see it right behind him. A huge golfer. Changed my game. And coming out right now, available, the all-new driver from LA Golf. Unbelievable. I'm telling you, you match the your swing speed to the size of the head on the golf club. They will shape a head of the golf club that matches the speed at which you swing the club. I'm telling you, it cuts down on the spray left, on the spray right. It's changed everything. And like I've said before, it's hurt me in ways because, well, I'm not winning any money out there. My handicap is too low. So, we're back in 30 seconds with Hot Mics, Hot Takes.
Welcome to LA Golf. You guys ready for the tour? We're the only golf company that manufactures its clubs here in the United States. All LA Golf drivers are built right here.
I'm very excited for today's production. It's going to be
4 left. Anybody hungry? So does he work here?
Work here? He lives here.
Welcome back to Hot Mics, presented by LA Golf. We are live on TuneIn. All right, time for today's Hot Mics, Hot Takes. Our executive producer, Rob Silverstein, is here. Hello, Rob.
Bill, we've made it clear that we're landman fanatics.
Love it.
We had Ali Lauder on last week. She was fantastic. You asked her about season 2, and she's very coy about it.
She goes, I don't know yet.
Right. Well, they've just finally announced that it is back, that they are going to have a season 2. Bill, why do you think it took so long? I have some thoughts on why.
I don't, why did it take so long to announce? I don't know. It's pretty obvious. I mean, you roll out at the end of season 1, you've got the introduction of Andy Garcia. And I can only reveal now, just because Andy asked me not to say anything, we were playing golf. But he told me, oh, yeah, I rock all of season 2. So I already knew there was a season 2, but I don't know why they do it that way.
Well,
who cares?
Taylor Sheridan.
He's not there for just 10 seconds.
Right,
Andy
but
Garcia.
Taylor Sheridan had a problem with Kevin Costner in Yellowstone, and eventually Kevin was gone from the show.
Yeah.
Maybe he didn't want to pay some of these people, and it took a long negotiation, whether it be Billy Bob or somebody of that nature. That's my only thought of why it took so long.
I would like to say this about Taylor Sheridan. I don't know the guy, but I think he's willing to pay his stars pretty well. And he's got a lot of them. He's got Sly Stallone on Tulsa King.
He does.
He's got Oscar winner Zoe Saldana and Oscar, I assume she's won one, Nicole Kidman, right? 2 Oscar winners on Lioness, right? And you had Costner before. Every show of his has a huge star.
You mentioned Nicole Kidman. She wants to work with Mike White next. She made that clear too. Whatever
Everybody
the next
wants to work
White
with
Lotus is, she says she wants in.
She does a show similar to the White Lotus. 9 Perfect Strangers. Remember that? Where she's the wacky, weird lady at the ayahuasca camp? I like that too. By the way, I like everything that she does. But I'm psyched for Landman. I'm psyched for Andy Garcia, who's great. He's going to be the cartel boss in the next season. And I love Billy Bob. The writing is perfect.
I didn't like that movie she did when she had to wear that nose thing. Nicole Kidman. I forgot what movie it was. I didn't like that movie. I walked out.
Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
I hated it.
Yeah, you just.
I don't know if that was it.
You just think she's sexy and you don't want to see her do that to her face.
Whatever.
Did you like Charlize in Monster? Remember
yes,
that?
I did.
Right?
I did.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I didn't like that. All right, Bill. Goodbye, Rosie. Okay.
Goodbye, Rosie
With Don in the
O'Donnell.
White House. Okay. She has moved to Ireland. And today, finally, she's been there for a while.
It's amazing.
Finally, today, she explained it. You can roll it.
This is unbelievable. Okay. Trump.
And when, it is safe for all citizens to have equal rights there in America, that's when we will consider coming back. It's been heartbreaking to see what's happening politically and hard for me personally as well. The personal is political, as we all know.
I know, Rosie.
So,
very hard.
Bill, guess who was in the Oval Office today?
As luck would have it. Luck of the Irish?
Irish Premier was there.
The Irish Premier, the Prime Minister of Ireland?
And so, I don't know if it was Peter Doocy, because Peter Doocy he'd be one of the guys. I don't know if it was him who
it's not
asked the
Doocy's
question.
voice. I know.
But somebody asked the question about Rosie, and here it is.
Oh, Donald.
Why in the world would you let Rosie O'Donnell move to Ireland? I think she's going to lower your happiness level.
That's true. Thank you. I like that question.
He does. Look at him. He's so happy.
Do you know you have Rosie O'Donnell? Do you know who she is? Do you know who she is?
Yeah. I'm joking.
You're better off not knowing.
I mean, this has been a feud that's gone on for so many. I was there at the very beginning of this feud. I mean, I think I am the reporter who collected the original soundbite.
He called her terrible things.
He called her things that we don't need to repeat.
Wasn't she on The View then?
No, she was. This is before The View, and no, it was. Yeah, she was on The View, and then that started the whole thing, and then they brought her back to The View. He always had something to say about. But the thing is about Donald is, listen, I was the New York correspondent for Access Hollywood when the Regular Apprentice launched. So I was literally with him 3 days a week. That was my job, is to be with him every week. And I would go in, and it would be like, okay, Donald, what happened to Tina? I can't believe she got voted off last Thursday. I thought she really did well with those lemonade sales. And then he'd be like, Tina, terrible, da-da-ba-da-ba. And then I go, okay, so while we're here, what do you think of Kim? What do you think of Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes breaking up? Or he would answer anything.
And he loved it.
And he still does.
Yes, that's today. He loved it. He said, great question.
If I was like, I could be in there with these White House reporters and be like, you want to get them going? Ask them about this one. And then he just goes off. It's unbelievable.
All right, Bill. Next week.
And by the way,
Yeah.
Rosie said, I'm going to come back when things get normal.
Yeah.
You're pretty much ensuring that things aren't going to get normal, Rosie. I don't think there's a tremendous mandate for your return. I don't know.
Right. I would agree with that. Bill, blockbuster shows next week. Let's talk about Monday first. Army Hammer is in studio.
For us.
Okay. A lot to speak to him about, isn't it? This is next week.
Well,
Monday.
I go way back with Army Hammer. I said it even on broadcast television, and they let me when he got taken down with this whole cannibalism thing. I said, this is just a giant load. In fact, my girlfriend said, I don't know. It's kind of hot. I said, really? I want to eat you? Eat your lunch? She goes, oh, it's hot. I love it. I mean, that got blown out of way up. He has been through the ringer. You know, and everybody in life,
self-inflicted.
Yeah, some self-inflicted,
Yes.
but not criminal. Everything against him has been dropped. There's no legal
I'm just saying,
criminal
he's
proceedings going against Army Hammer.
No.
Yeah, does he have some kink? Yeah, he's been clear about that. He's going to be in studio here with us, face to face. It's Hammer time, Monday on Hot Mics.
About that. And then Wednesday,
Mm-hmm.
Candace Owens.
Oh, she responded, huh?
She did.
I got to tell you, this Candace Owens, her Blake Lively stuff, you know, she really trucked it out unbelievably. Right now, she's also doing a whole series, which I'm listening to, on Harvey Weinstein. She is going back and looking at all of the documents, and she is relitigating some of these cases against Harvey. And, a lot of it's very, very compelling. Very compelling.
So we have a big week next week. All right, Bill, now you're going to tease Vinny. We're going to go to commercial there. You're going to tease Skinny Vinny. Okay? So, yeah.
Well, Skinny Vinny, my assistant, on his way to losing 50 pounds in 6 months. Let's see what happened. He's fallen off. He's had success. Is it a setback week? We're pulling for this guy. He's only 5'7". He should not be in the 200s. All right, we'll be right back on Hot Mics.
Welcome to LA Golf. You guys ready for the tour? We're the only golf company that manufactures its clubs here in the United States. All LA golf drivers are built right here.
I'm very excited for today's production. It's going to be
4 left. Anybody hungry? So does he like work here?
Work here? He lives here.
All right, back on Hot Mics. Skinny Vinny, the Slim Reaper. By the way, Vinny and I are getting on we're traveling. Vinny and I are going to the Bahamas for 3 days. It's work though. It's all work. Vinny, we're going to put you to work. And don't you dare. We're going to the Food and Wine Festival at the Atlantis Resort in Bahamas. That's going to be fun. Shaggy's putting on a concert. You're probably going to have a setback. Your weigh-in next week is going to be a disaster. But let's see what happened with this one. We started at 267, went to 257. You got down to 244. 23 pounds down. Bro,
Yes,
and how long?
About a month and a half.
A month and a half, 23 pounds.
Yeah.
All right, so what does it feel like? What is it?
Feels good. Last week I had that setback. I went to 251, right? From 249 to 251, and then I lost it all. Like you said, I think it was water weight or whatever, but
yeah, well, you were drinking. People grieve in different ways. You were at your uncle's funeral, and sometimes you need to numb.
Everyone was drinking.
Right, of course, and so you weren't going to leave that out, and that's fine. So beautiful. Are you still snoring like a buffalo, or is it a little quieter?
I think my sleep has gotten much better, so I'm probably.
We're sharing a room
more
down there because the budget is very tight.
I got my own room.
I know. I was trying to I just wanted you to be nervous.
Oh, no.
I had a friend that we went to the Super Bowl together. We had to share a room, and he's a big snorer. And I just piled up I just put all these shoes, like 4 sets of shoes. So I had 4 pairs. I had 8 shoes individually. And every time he'd snore, I just lobbed them over like that. Oh and boom, you'd hit him, and he'd stop and choke for a little bit, and then right back into it. So I don't have to do that with you.
Nope. No, we're all good.
Skinny Vinny down 23 pounds from the beginning. It's unbelievable, man. There's a lot of love for you on that one. Look at everybody in there loves you. Hot Mics with Billy Bush is done for now. We're back Monday with Army Hammer in studio. And that is it. We are presented by LA Golf. Very luckily, Take your swing to the next level with LA Golf's cutting-edge technology. Visit lagolf.com. Upgrade your game. You can always listen to us exclusively on TuneIn. Ask Alexa or Google, play Hot Mics with Billy Bush on TuneIn. Thanks for watching and listening on TuneIn. We're back Monday with Hammer Time.